Let me tell you where our field's often been around benchmarking. We love to know, how do I compare to someone else? How do I look? How do I compare? In leadership, I get my 360. How am I doing versus somebody else? And I love to see the comparison shopping. Or we then say, oh, I need to improve on this because I'm not as good, or I need to get better, that I'm build on my strengths. Who do I learn from? Where do I go get a best practice? Look at the books on your shelf. Look at the books on my shelf. I've written the books. They're full of best practices. What is it that Amazon does? What is it that Unilever does in social responsibility? When you stop and take a step back, benchmarking is a comparison game. And so instead of benchmarking, how do I compare? Best practice, who do I copy? Let's move to guidance. What can I do to meet my goals? It sounds so simple to figure out, what does guidance mean? So when we go from benchmarking, how am I doing, to best practice, who can I learn from? What's next? And the term we came up with is guidance. I like the term guidance. When I was a young man in college, I went to a guidance counselor who gave me tests, looked at my strengths, my passions, and helped me shape a career. Now that I'm old, I have a retirement guidance counselor. Guidance is the computer, the phone is a guidance about my life and where I can spend. Guidance moves from description to prescription. What should I do? As we explored that, how do I get guidance? For example, I've thought about people space, and I was going back over some of the last issues that have been so good. Your 4 or 5 or 6 articles every issue. Oh, if I go back over the last 6 or 8 months, I've got 50, 60, 70 articles in people space that are all terrific. And I go, wow, that's really good stuff. So here's the question. Not just how am I doing against that stuff, benchmarking, best practice, wow, that's good stuff. Or Sean wouldn't put it in her news report. Which ones work for me? Which ones work for me? And notice the simple example I gave. I have to start with what I want. So in an organization, we say guidance begins with results. An HR professional sits with a business leader. The first question is not, here's an HR tool. It could be whatever tool it is, building more agility, changing the culture, building leadership. The first question should be, what are the results our organization is trying to accomplish? How do we define success? Because guidance needs a North Star, Steve Covey's word, it needs a direction. And so we believe that guidance starts by saying, here's 5 results that most businesses are trying to do. This is not new, it's the balanced scorecard. Employee results. In today's world, employee well-being, their productivity is so critical. Strategic results, reinventing our strategy, especially in the digital world. Customer results, our net promoter score, our customer share. Financial results, both financial performance and investors, and community results. So critical today in the transparent world. Guidance starts by saying, what are the results we're going after? What is it we are trying to accomplish? And then the second question is, where could we invest in human capital to make those results happen? Of all those 50 or 60 great ideas in people space, which 3 or 4 work best for us? That's the question. It's actually a pretty simple question. Do we in HR know where we should invest our human capital work in order to deliver the results that matter to our company? That sounds easy. It is not easy to answer. Do you as an HR professional know where you should invest in the next 12 to 18 months in human capital to deliver the results your business cares about? What a simple question. That's the question guidance is trying to answer. One of the questions we face with guidance, and I'll give a specific, but let me frame it a little bit more, is to say, what's the portfolio of things we could invest in? We've got to have a topology. We've got to have a way to organize this almost unlimited world. So as I said earlier, think of 5 columns. Those are the outcomes we want. Employees, strategy, customers, and financial, investors, and communities. Now think of the rows. Where could we invest? There's 4 pathways in what we call the human capital area. So human capital includes 4 things. Talent, that's my fingers. What can we do to build better people? The individual competence, the talent. We've identified 10 initiatives. Second is organization, my fist. We've identified 12 organizational capabilities like agility, innovation, efficiency, social responsibility, culture, leadership. We've identified 6 ways to build leadership, and human capital includes my risk, the HR function itself. So take a quick step back. There's 5 columns, 4 pathways for human capital: talent, organization, leadership, and HR. In those 4 pathways, this is where it gets complex. There's 37 initiatives we've identified. And I know we don't have it. We had 36. We added one in the last 3 months. 5 columns, 37 initiatives. Think of that grid. That's 185 cells. Where should I invest? Where should I invest? Which of those 37 rows will give me the cells, the columns I care about? Here's the value specifically that you ask about. We worked in a company, and the company was working very hard to retain good people. And so they created an algorithm that actually got a patent. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds or euros to figure out, how do we know who's likely to leave? By their, for example, one of the predictors of leaving, they update their LinkedIn profile. They start attending other conferences. They have a boss who's not as good. They've had too long in the same position. This company created a very nice profile of who's like to leave. Here's the question. In our talent row, remember, talent is one of the pathways for outcomes. Retaining good people is clearly one of the initiatives. When we look at our data, and we now have data from 1,250 companies, that's amazing. The ability to retain people did not have much impact on the outcomes. Let me say that again. The ability to retain good people across 1,200 sample did not impact those 5 outcomes of employee, strategy, customer, investor, and community. Acquiring people did. So we go back to the senior HR person and say, it could be that in your company, retaining people is the key talent initiative. But for the overall sample, it's not. Let us help you figure out which of the initiatives work for you. I'll give one other quick example. In leadership, we have 6 initiatives to build better leadership. A lot of companies want to invest in leadership development. Let's train and develop our leaders. We'll spend money building a leadership training program. Our data shows that for the overall sample, maybe not for your company, that doesn't have the most impact on those outcomes. What does is building a business case. If people know why leadership matters and how leadership will drive the results of our company, that will cause more positive outcomes than simply designing a training program. If I'm an HR professional, the first thing I've got to do is get my mindset right. And this is not new. Sean, you and I have talked about this. For decades and decades ago, HR was focused on activity. How many people got 40 hours of training? I hope you remember that discussion from 10 or 20 years ago. And finally, it dawned on us that it's not 40 hours of training that matters. Did the 40 hours of training have an impact? And so we don't want to look at HR in terms of activity. We want to look at it in terms of outcome. This is an extension of that thinking. Only move it up a level. We don't want to look at the initiatives we invest in. We want to make sure that they deliver the right outcomes. So how do you take that simple question? And I love what you said. I love to think in terms of diamonds. You start with a simple question. Are my investments in human capital delivering the results that my business needs? What a simple question. And by the way, you laughed and I laugh. And you got these 37 by 5 matrix. It's just horribly complex. Then at the bottom of the diamond, how do you make it simple? I've been trying to put my whatever IP I have in a box. And that's the guidance system. We've been able to say, go online, www.rbl.ai, with CorpU is a great partner. We can now do a survey that takes 10 to 12 minutes on each of those 4 pathways that will give you some guidance about where you should invest. Then when you go into a business leader, the biggest problem at the bottom of the diamond is your mindset. I think we in HR get so excited about our latest best practices or innovative ideas, that we walk into the business leader and say, I'm going to do this in diversity. I'm going to do this in culture change. I'm going to do this in agility. I'm going to do this in innovation. Instead of starting with that result, start with the question: what can we do with our HR, human capital investments, to help us as a business reach our business results? Let me tell you where I hope we go, and I hope people will join us in this journey of exploration. Think of 5 outcomes as a pentagon. I'll hold up 5 fingers. You've got employee, strategy, customer, investor, financial, and community. Think of those 5 triangles in a pentagon. Think of 4 squares, those 4 pathways: talent, I could invest in talent, organization, leadership, and HR. Here's where we want to go, and we're not there, I'm admitting, but this is the vision, and it's always good to have a vision that leads you forward. A business leader says, I look at those 5 outcomes, I'd like to move up 30% in customer. At the same time, look at the 4 cells: talent, organization, HR, leadership. It looks to me like the organizational piece has to move up the most. Ooh, that's cool. So if I want to move up customer, organization moves up. Now double click on that. We have 12 organizational capabilities. Which of those 12 should I invest in my human capital investments to move that customer dial 30%? This shows up. Now, let me just stop. I think that's cool. By the way, I shouldn't share what we don't have. We haven't yet done that because we need the data to make it work. We need to create those algorithms. But that's so cool. And it goes the other way. I want to go invest in leadership. No, let's say organization. I want to become more agile because everybody's telling me to be agile. That's in the organizational capability 4 cells. If I increase my agility index, my agility score, and it's part of our survey, by 30%, what's going to happen to my Pentagon? Which of those triangles, employee, strategy, customer, investor, or citizenship, which one am I going to impact the most? By the way, I'd love to have those 2 dials. I see HR people in the future sitting down with their business leader saying, let's speculate a little bit. What if we want to increase our employee well-being? That is such an issue coming out of the pandemic. We've been writing about, and you've had some great pieces in People Space about the emotional deficit disorder and the need for empathy and building that. Whoa, what if we want to increase that? Where should we invest? Let's start playing with those 2 dials. That's where I see the guidance system heading, so that we in HR become digitally enabled. This is all digital. It's all SaaS. It's software as a service. It's all data-based, using algorithms to make better decisions. When we go into a company or when we talk to people, the most common barrier we've run into with HR people is their mindset. And I think a lot of us in HR, with that, it's our, what do they call it? Unconscious bias, some of Amy Edmondson's work. I think we have this unconscious bias of seeking best practice. We've even gone to some really great thought leaders in HR and said, look at this idea. It will help you focus your work. But what's the best practice we should have in agility? That's a hot topic today. The first best practice, is agility the right one to focus on? Or should we focus on innovation? Should we focus on collaboration? Should we focus on customer service? Which capability should our organization drive right now? And so I find in HR, the barriers getting our head set around, we are not in HR to do HR. We're in HR to help our business deliver results. I think there's going to be 20 to 30% or some percent of HR professionals who are comfortable wearing their old clothes. They fit well, they wear, we benchmark. Just tell me the company. I'm going to go try to copy what Amazon does with customers. What I said before, Unilever does brilliantly. And I hate to start naming companies because there's so many good ones. What other companies do with technology. I hope in HR that we're willing to get out of our comfort zone. One of the lessons that I hope people think about in the last year, and it's been the weirdest year, it's not just a global pandemic health-wise, it's an economic crisis for some industries. As you said, it's a digital reinvention time with AI and machine learning and distributed technology. It's a social citizenship crisis with racism, refugees, Black Lives Matter. It's an emotional crisis as we face emotional trauma. In the United States, more than others, more than Britain right now, it's a political crisis as we have such horrible political dissent. The collection of these crises has taught us that we're going to live in a world of uncertainty. We don't know the future. In fact, I like to say anybody that comes on the show with you or with someone else and says, I know the new normal, turn around and run because they don't need you. They bought Google, Zoom, and Amazon stock in January of 2020. We don't know the new normal. And so instead of being threatened by uncertainty, instead of trying to manage uncertainty, let's harness it. Let's harness it. Let's use the uncertainty as an opportunity to discover new ideas. I hope HR people in the last year have found that in this crisis of 2020 and 21, human capital is center front. What we know, what we do is the most critical thing a company has to work on. 2008 and 9 was the financial and economic crisis. 2020 and 21 is the people and organization crisis. I hope you've reinvented. I hope you've experimented. By the way, if you're in that bottom 20% you're not willing to, I hope you've had great guidance for your retirement plan because you're going to be moved by. Somebody's going to replace you. Companies cannot allow human capital to lag the requirements of the business today. Now, in my mind, the best is yet to come. That's an opportunity for discovery. And I hope that we in HR people can discover what human capital initiatives, I'll say it again, in talent, organization, leadership, and HR, will deliver employee results, help us become caregivers to our people, deliver strategic results as our business reinvents our strategy and how we position ourselves in a new digital world, reinvents customer results, net promoter scores, customer relationships, rediscovers and reinvents financial results, and perhaps most critical today is citizenship results. For me, Sean, this is the future of HR. I hope you can get on board. We've tried to give you the simple gangplank or plankway to get on this new direction. Is it perfect? Not even close. In fact, as you get involved, you're going to tell me, oh, Dave said this would be so easy. It's not. Yell at me, curse at me, and then join us on this journey of discovery to make the best yet ahead. So, Sean, I feel passionate about it. I am so grateful, Sean, for people like you who are constantly not doing what they've always done. My rule of thumb has been for the past number of years, and you and I talked about this a decade ago, I want 20 to 25% new material every 12 to 18 months. For me, the past year has moved that up to 40 to 50%. My dear friends in HR, get on board, reinvent, rediscover. Try those things that will work, even if we don't do them perfectly. Get on board. The best is yet ahead.